Hey everyone, welcome to the Annie Tunes In podcast. Today's guest is Darin Olien. Darin is known as a superfood hunter who has gained a ton of popularity since co-starring in the hit Netflix series Down to Earth with Zac Efron. Darin's mission is to develop a healthier you and a healthier planet. He wants to eliminate single-use plastics and bring awareness to what is causing harm in the world today and in humans. I'm super excited for this episode. We discuss a ton of topics and what he's up to, so stay tuned. Welcome to the Annie Tunes In podcast.
Right on. I'm glad to be here.
So I want to talk first about your interest in this superfood hunting. So I know that you're kind of known as this superfood hunter. As of now, you're going all over the world doing this. So how did this interest begin?
It was kind of out of my own necessity. Being an athlete, a college football player, I got injured and I couldn't kind of get myself back on the field again, which changed everything. It changed my trajectory. It changed studying exercise phys and kinesiology and nutrition, and then that kind of opened up this amazing fascination with this miracle that we have, clearly the body. And slowly through, understanding movement, understanding what I was eating, I was starting to stabilize what I couldn't stabilize in the traditional sense of my back being kind of torn apart. And then really on the side for years, I was in that space doing a lot of exercise therapy, and but then I was like, playing with food and seeing what was going on or not going on, and seeing marketing not equate to what was really in the packages or in the supplements. And it was just one moment, like, looking at the back of a package going, why the hell would they put this in there? It goes against everything that they're claiming this product was supposed to do, because maybe it was an artificial flavor, maybe it was a filler, maybe it was a GMO maltodextrin, whatever could have been. I don't remember at the time. Well, I don't remember now what it was at the time. And then and then it was, let's play with some formulas, because it was like back in the day, it was like Power Bar was like the go-to performance
Oh, I
bar. And
used
I
to
was
eat
like,
those all the time.
oh man. And they were, of course, they made them really tasty and sugary and and very difficult to chew. Um and so I was like, man, what I'm learning about food, and it was before functional was a term. It was just like, how can I get as much nutrient density in terms of botanical performance in a quick and easy way. So I started developing actually a food bar. God, it had 60 ingredients in, and this is dating back to 2002,
Mhm.
2003, 2004. And then at 2004, it was a powerful moment. It was when my father passed away, and it was this junction between playing around in this space and actually doing it professionally, and then putting these things that I'm learning into the world. And in a lot of ways, finding these botanicals, learning about them, and then doing it in a professional way. So that's literally after the grief of my dad, that's when I started jumping on planes. I set my first company. It was called Darin's Naturals. And I ended up in the botanical capital of the world, in the Amazon, and the Andes, and then you go there with some interest of maca or Sasha Inchi or this Incan berry called aguamanto, and then you come away with 35 things you've never seen before or heard about. And um and that just turned on this, you know you know cheekily saying, it turned on that discovery place in me, that investigative place, that curious kid that was like, this is like a real life Indiana Jones kind of shit. And then what really became apparent, it was for me, the indigenous people. So why I showed up in the middle of nowhere was innocent. It was like, well, if I'm gonna formulate with these products or these botanicals, I have to know how they're grown. I have to know how to use them in the best way possible. And then how do you get from cultivation, uh, foraging, whatever it was, to processing and preserve and understand the botanical and the process enough to then preserve that which you want to really capture, because there's, for lack of a better term, there's gold in the constituents and the compounds of these botanicals, and some of which have been used for tens of thousands of years. And what I would see in the Western model of just promoting snake oil was they'd use the story, but then the neutered product would show up on the shelves. And so I spent a lot of time in research facilities, in huts, in the middle of the Amazon, in the 14,000 feet in the Andes, sitting with families and sitting with people that have been passing down this information. Um, and it just became, 15, 20 years of just being so turned on by the exploration and then the preservation. And then luckily in that process, I was like, I'm going to put out all these things. I know that these things aren't seen in the world yet. Um, and I was developing direct relationships, and some of which now they're 20 years old, where I know these indigenous families and people. Um, and then, it's like, it's that whole thing of, build it and they will come. As I was starting to develop Darin's Naturals and develop products, and I was, I burned through all my money and all the travel, and then kind of serendipitously, I get contacted by Beachbody, which at the time was basically P90X and a bunch
Mhm.
of other programs, and they said they wanted to kind of match their mastery. I mean, these are my words. They wanted to match their kind of success in the exercise world and match it with this idea of a shake. And at that point, I was formulating all kinds of things, and I'm like, I can make this into a powder easy. Like, I mean, relatively easy.
Yeah.
So I was putting stuff in now it's called Shakeology, and that was in 2006. So, adaptogenic herbs and prebiotics and botanicals and superfruits, and really getting supported by a big company that was then testing the rigors that it would take. Because keep in mind, in my career, I've been in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of factories and
Wow.
processing facilities, and you see the nightmare. The nightmare is I started to know where all the, I would say all, of course I didn't know all, but I knew major suppliers of, all the grass juice powders, all of the macas, all of the, I know all the moringas. I knew where all the shit was coming from, and it scared the hell out of me because the customer had no idea. And sometimes the companies themselves just didn't look under the hood enough. They would just get the perceived, test from the supplier or the manufacturer and just called it good enough. And it was never good enough for me. So that's how it started.
Well, you wanted the real deal. And I think you're one of the only people that will go across the world to actually see where this is coming from. And it is true. Like when we read food labels, we'll see natural flavors and we'll see like palm oil, and we think these things are okay. And we don't really research the company. And I do find that it's hard to find what the true, real, clean foods are. So if
Yeah.
we're going to somewhere like Whole Foods or a regular grocery store, how do we find the proper foods to eat without having to do a ton of research if we're just grabbing things when we're at the store?
You don't know.
Hmm.
I mean, which comes by way of a second book I just wrote, because there's an invisible world that we can't know, and the regulators aren't doing their job. Um, and I started getting this information from a father in the 90s. My dad, before he passed away, had chemical sensitivities. So exposures of chemicals in food, water, air, deodorants, shampoos, colognes, perfumes. So I started learning in college from my dad, who was being exposed to things that we all were being exposed to. Um, and then I got informed superfood hunting, seeing how things were processed, or how, the things that were not being tested. If you don't test it, it's not there, right? So USDA, FDA, EPA, FCC, just keep naming those names. Those regulatory bodies. The caveat is, I think there is, and I've met great people in those agencies, but they are largely understaffed, underpaid, and not doing an adequate job at all. So the reason I say that is, so yeah, I mean, back in the day, we'd say turn over the package and just look. And you can still do that. If you're buying ultra processed food, you clearly know that by a bunch of chemicalized names that you don't know. So we do want to still turn over the package and pick, products that are, excuse me, that are largely simple. And one second.
You're good.
um, that are largely just food and not these added ingredients. And unfortunately, the aisles of grocery stores and all of that stuff, most of that is junk and unregulated. So I come back to, you don't really know. And to the point where it's so, and I don't say this to bum people out or to create a paralysis. There's always an option, but we have to know what we're dealing with. When we have orange juice that shows up on the market and has 200 forever chemicals in that orange juice, which just happened a few weeks ago by one of the major suppliers, um, it's there. It's always been there for the most part. It's not like it just showed up in a few of them. It just hasn't been tested. So
Hmm.
once someone tests it, great work by Environmental Working Group. They do a lot of stuff, a lot of individual investigative testing, a lot of other agencies as well. But consumer reports, no, Consumer Labs does a lot of
Hmm.
stuff in the supplement industry, calls out stuff going, hey, we tested all these ingredients for curcumin, and 80% of them didn't even have it in there in an efficacious level, nor did they even
Wow.
match what their curcumin level was supposed to be on the label that they've created themselves. So it's just a wild west. So you're going, wait a minute, isn't the FDA regulating this stuff? No, they're not. They're supposed to, but they're not. They don't have the proper resources. They're not doing it. So what tends to happen is, for us, when we start a formula, we just create our own criteria. So going back to Shakeology, we test each batch 1,500 different ways
Wow.
for what's supposed to be in each ingredient and what's not supposed to be in each ingredient. So, and you don't know that by turning over that bag. You don't know that
Hmm.
by seeing a pretty picture on a screen either. So the easiest thing you can do is, of course, if you can afford it, buy organic, but there's still possible exposures to all kinds of things. Did you know that organic food, and especially the lettuces and most of that stuff grown in Central California, one of their fertilizing processes is is spraying the the growing food, the lettuce, the romaine, with feces of chickens and torn up, whatever, because it quote unquote fertilizes the ground. How do you think E. coli shows up in spinach?
It's so
It's
true.
not that it's not that spinach has E. coli within it. It's because exposure, and then of course, if it's not washed properly down the line, then it's just it has to be there because you're spraying this stuff with. So how do you turn over the ingredient label on a romaine lettuce, right? So
Impossible.
right. So again, you go back to, okay, basic stuff. Wash your vegetables, wash your exposed kind of dirty dozen. And there's
Hmm.
a list of called dirty dozen. If you are eating conventional, like everything from all the berries, strawberries are brutally sprayed
Oh, wow.
with pesticides and herbicides. So you want to go with organic and still wash them. Berries, cucumbers, like things that are exposed, broccoli, all these things are exposed. They're not like a banana. A
Hmm.
banana at least isn't from the outside in exposing the food that you're eating because you're peeling it, right? So at least from
Interesting.
those, and then wash your apples, wash all that stuff. So it's a long way of saying it's virtually impossible. But here's some of the things you can do. Grow your own food. Do the best you can, even if it's basil in the windowsill. It's great to as a teaching tool as well for your children. You can actually grow strawberries in a windowsill.
That would be
If you,
fun.
yeah, yeah, and strawberries are actually quite easy to grow. But if you have any plot of land, I'm talking a square meter, grow food.
Hmm.
Stop watering lawns and start growing food. It's ridiculous that there's 47,000 acres of lawn in the United States watered for no reason other than
To make it
a
look pretty.
yeah, a border on a picture. That's all it is. It's a border on your home of a perception of what you think a home is supposed to be like. What if, of course, climate matters, but there's a lot of things in any climate you can grow food. You just have to take different precautions, different ways of doing things. But you can grow food in any piece of land virtually anywhere. And and so imagine then walking out of your home, picking a lime, a lemon. If you're in Florida, you can virtually grow anything.
Hmm.
Uh, Certainly all the way up to New York, like there's a lot of subtropical plants that you can grow, even here in California.
Yeah, you really can grow anything. And I think a lot of the time people don't want to go to the hassle. I mean, people are buying already cut vegetables and fruit because they don't want to spend any time doing anything. And I think the
Yeah.
problem is laziness with to some
Yeah.
extent that people just don't want to do this. And it's ridiculous, like what you said. I mean, it's insane. So we're getting interrupted left and right here. Sorry.
It's
It
the
is. I
power
know,
of
right?
this subject,
Yes.
maybe.
So what are some foods that you personally grow?
Well, I grow about three, four different types of lettuces.
Hmm.
Red leaf, green leaf, butter leaf, arugula, basil, um, spinach, uh, and that. I mean, there's nothing more Plus, I just talked to this company, a free plug. I don't get paid by these guys, but there's a cool company if you don't called Lettuce Grow,
Okay.
like lettuce
Hmm.
grow, like let us grow,
Cool.
and it's a vertical hydroponic. Now, typically, soil first. If you have soil, use soil. But there's a lot of millions of people that don't have access to clean, even soil at all.
Hmm.
So maybe they have a deck, a porch. Even you can grow this
Interesting.
inside.
Wow.
And so you can verticalize hydroponic and literally, and I have one of their, because they sent me one a few years ago. And before, when I was restoring my land,
Hmm.
I didn't have anything, and going out literally with a bowl and picking the lettuce and filling up a bowl and eating it within 10 minutes of consuming it. Because once a food is picked, the nutrient value is almost instantly going down. So now think about the transportation. Our systems are, number one, incredible that we've even got it here, that we can grow something in Chile and have that apple show up in our local market. It's crazy that you can buy an apple in Chile and it can be here and you can be eating it in your morning oatmeal. So that's extraordinary. However, there's some fatal conveniences tied to that, right? So the transportation, once you pick something at its not ideal ripening, you're missing out on a huge amount of nutrient value. So just generally speaking, we have our country in America was founded on farmers. 90% in the early 1910, 1920, 90% of all Americans were farmers growing their own food, right? Now, all of the food grown today is by 2%.
Wow.
So 2% of the population is growing all of our food, and how they're growing it is utterly crazy. It's crazy from the standpoint of it's using dirt, no longer soil, because it's been destroyed. They're putting inputs on it just to enough to stimulate growth. So the nutrient value, we've known this since the Congress ordered nutrient value compensate what am I looking for? The Congress ordered, like in there was early 1900s, and then 1933 they were looking at the value of the nutrients grown in said foods, and the value had already dropped by 20, 30, 50, 70% in some of the foods. So they knew that. And listen, the Dust Bowl in the Midwest, they knew it. It was, our topsoil was leaving then, and it's still leaving now. That means the fungal activity, the rhizomes, the mycelia, all of that stuff is just wiped out. And so, yeah, we're producing volume food, but nutrient poor food. So we're running around with access to food, but with nutrient deprivation at an all-time high. So I always think of systems. Are systems providing what it needs to? Largely they're not. We're producing, about as much food as 10 billion people we could feed right now.
Wow.
But there's 2 to 3 billion people that don't have access to food on a consistent basis. They're slowly starving. So our system breakdown. Today, there's people that don't even know what clean water looks like, right? They don't have food. So we have failed as a human family to provide food and water and shelter to our human family. And so I see failure many different ways, because I'm a very optimistic person. But in order for change to happen, you need to face what's the truth is. And the truth is we don't have clean food anymore. We should be growing. We should all start planting our food right now. 47 million acres of lawn. We all can grow our own food right now. And our food security would change within a season, right? And then all of the climate positive things would happen as a result, as a side benefit of you getting fresh food. And I work with a great company called Food Forest Abundance, right? So they're setting up these things all over the world using regenerative permaculture methods, recapturing better water use, yielding, protecting the plants naturally through how you're growing, the cycles of growing, what you're growing. So we have this, but we need to relearn some of the apathetic story that's been told to us. We have become weak. in many different ways. So yeah, of course, we all want these conveniences. It's easy to be consumed by what's on our phone and
Hmm.
just order our whatever it is we want to eat and literally show up in 30 minutes at our door. It's extraordinary what we've done. So I don't want to minimize that, but what's being delivered is is so detrimental and poisonous. And I use those words very deliberately
Hmm.
because it's poisonous. The very fact that the Mayo Clinic had an amazing, just blaringly obvious study that they looked at. And listen, you're been in health and fitness and take care of yourself and in the optimum zone. We're talking very conservative, eating pretty well, exercising, living a decent kind of healthy lifestyle.
Hmm.
The Mayo Clinic came and concluded that only 2.7% of all of the 330 million people in America were deemed healthy.
That's
What?
mind-blowing.
Right? Like, what the
Yeah.
is going on?
Yeah.
So like, I look at, you know how it's easy to trust people, but then certainly by the actions they take, certainly tell you the truth, right?
Hmm.
Certainly. We want to trust people. I trust
Right.
people way too much. And then I'm like, wait a minute, you
You're like,
said
why did
that.
I do that? Yeah.
Yeah, you said that, but you're actually doing that. So that's the truth. Then, and you keep repeating that thing. So we keep repeating the same thing. We keep repeating the largest killers of our human family, I say Americans and human family, because they've somehow adopted our stupid way of eating, the quote unquote Western model. Uh, it's harming us. It's killing
Yeah.
us. It's the top cancer and heart disease, and and
100%.
and and then the people that are supposed to be keeping us healthy are the third leading cause of death. The practitioners, the
Yep.
doctors, like the misdiagnosis, the over prescribed pills and all of this stuff. It's like that's listen, people, that's not a model to bet on. You want to like that is a model of destruction, and then the understanding that we need to depend on a pill or a doctor that has spent 2 days on nutrition uh, is just is just ridiculous. So all of that to say, it's almost overwhelming for sure, but we have to face and see what's going on for us to make a change ourselves. So what can we do? Filter your water, minimize exposure to chemicals that show up in our deodorants, our shampoos, our perfumes, our homes, our beauty products, our clothing. Like minimize those exposures just so over time. Get good sleep. Get that good water in. Eat whole food. Like do your best. Start growing your own food. You don't have to do this overnight, but it's just continuing to understand the deal and then start to, you know, wake up from the freaking apathetic matrix that is ultimately just hurting way too many people.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people focus way too much on the exterior. And then when it comes to the interior, they're treating themselves as a dumpster. They're like, I will do anything. And then you could tell them this tanning lotion is cancer causing. And they're like, I don't care. It'll make me look good. So that's like the mindset that I see from a lot of people. And it's like weight loss, it's the exterior. But when it comes to if they take a diet pill or they eat crap diet foods, they don't care what it's doing internally. And I think
Totally.
that's part of the issue is the marketing and what we see and
Yeah,
everyone looking all glamorous is what people are focused on and they don't
yeah,
focus on themselves, which is so
right.
backwards. So I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that these superfoods are super important. It's a gold mine. So what are some superfoods that you think are like vital to include for everyone that can really make a difference? I know there's a billion, you've seen it all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, money obviously is an issue with getting some exotic superfoods around the world. So I can dive into some of those. The ones that I will say that are super cheap and extremely powerful.
Hmm.
Like so cheap for 25 cents, you can make a salad in 5 to 7 days. And that is get some organic sprouting seeds. And you can use alfalfa, you can use broccoli, and broccoli's got so many incredible studies, sulforaphane, um, anti-cancer, micronutrients, mind-blowing. So you can sprout in a mason jar and put 2 tablespoons in a mason jar, soak it for 8 hours, uh, let it drain out so you can get either a mesh lid for $5 or a cloth with a rubber band and drain that. And then over the course of every day, you basically water those seeds,
Hmm.
invert it twice a day, and you keep doing that. And that whole thing, 2 tablespoons, will be a full size, full filled up mason jar of sprouting seeds. And so eat the hell out of those things. You can do that, or full sprouts. So, and that's something, an amazing book by Doug Evans, the Sprouting Book.
Okay.
Incredible guy. We're doing some cool stuff. I think we have a easy to follow little product that will be coming out in April. But other things like, listen, like right here for all of those seeing this, like this is a cacao wafer.
Oh, wow.
It's a
That's so
hundred
cool.
percent organic Peruvian cacao. No sweet, nothing. I keep them around, I stick them in, and the high magnesium content, the serotonin inducing, dopamine inducing, phenylethylamine compounds. They have a interesting chemical compound mixture of why chocolate and Valentine's Day kind of come together, not from the sugar standpoint, but from this feeling neurologically of falling in love. So that's where that cacao side of it comes in. One of the greatest medicinal plants, but if you kind of don't get it mixed with milk and in too much sugar, it's fantastic. Another very powerful one that is one of the greats, and that is food grade raw spirulina.
Oh, yes.
Different, different than powdered.
Okay.
So the company Raw Living Spirulina, one of the great companies doing it. Um, I've loved them and support them and consume the hell out of those. It comes in frozen, and so I take tablespoons every day.
Mhm.
Very powerful. I haven't seen, I'm open to people suggesting because I've tested many of it. Moringa, aloe vera, which is a leaf that comes
Mhm.
originally from India, and now all throughout uh, West Africa, and it is incredible. They call it the never die tree because it's so micronutrient rich. And then, you know, again, there's so many, but I would say more than ever, the class of adaptogenic herbs and medicinal mushrooms should be consumed
Mhm.
a lot just because of their immune modulating effect and their stress reduction effect. And that science goes back um, a long time. Reishi, chaga mushrooms, one of the great antioxidant medicinal mushrooms in the world. And then you have things like Schizandra as an amazing adaptogen used by traditional Chinese medicine for the last 9,000 years. You have Tulsi. Even turmeric is a bit of an adaptogen. Doesn't quite have all of the aspects, but turmeric you can use that constantly. There's no ability to have too much of it. Ginger, ginseng is a great
Mhm.
adaptogen. So there's, all of these things can help over time kind of fortify your body. These aren't stimulants. These are things that help modulate. If you have a low immune system, it raises it. If your immune system is riding high, it can help calm it down. If your energy is low, it can help building those things up. So that those are a few, but certainly in the medicinal mushrooms and the adaptogens are, I think, just because of the world being crazy and us needing to keep our mental health in check.
Yes.
Um, I think those are something that to double down on is really good. And eat good cacao,
Mhm.
tested good cacao.
Yeah.
There's a company, I don't get anything from that, but I get a lot of those wafers from. They do a lot of great testing called Z Natural, so you can get
Okay.
you know 5-10 pounds of those wafers or cacao powder or something like that. So I will take, if I want like a chocolate little elixir in the morning, I'll
Mhm.
add some medicinal mushrooms. I'll add like heaping tablespoons of cacao powder, and then I'll throw in lohan gao, or many people call it monk fruit.
Mhm.
So no sugar, but get that sweet. Lohan gao I've looked at. It's a Chinese bulb of a fruit, and again they use that for not only diabetes, but help modulate appetite. But it is also one of the best sweeteners.
Ooh, I
Uh,
was gonna ask about that, what you do when you have cravings. But the mushrooms, so they have a ton now with like droplets and chocolates and gummies. Do you think it's
yeah.
important to have the actual plant?
Well, medicinal mushrooms, you have, in order to actually, you're not, these are different, like shiitake or maitake or oyster mushrooms or even lion's mane, you can cook.
Hmm.
So you never want to eat those raw. You can cook those and bring those in. Mushrooms can be an incredible addition to foods and stews and soups and things like that. But medicinal mushrooms, when it comes to like reishi and chaga, for example, these things are hard. They need to be extracted. You can get these still raw. You can get chunks of them and you can break it up, but then you water extract. But then great companies like Four Sigmatic and what Taro has been doing over there, they dual extract it for you. So you're buying the convenience in a good way. They dual extract, they water extract and they alcohol extract. So now they're extracting all of the compounds that you get, and then you're buying that. So I
Okay.
think the most important thing, or one of the important things, is identifying good companies doing good things
Mhm.
and then spending the money on that. That's where I like the voting of people supporting companies that have that in mind. And sometimes that's a learned thing, because it's again hard to know. But Sigmatic is one of those companies
Yeah.
creating great medicinal mushrooms. There's others too now. But those things I will pay for, because I'm not going to sit here and I've done it, but I'm not going to sit here and dual extract chaga mushrooms, right? It's a long, arduous process. I want the convenience, but I
Mhm.
want the convenience without lessening the quality. And
Right.
so, it's important to do things
I
like
think
that.
that's key is finding brands like that because convenience is a huge thing and not I think that's the main thing why people don't do a lot of these things is because of the time that it can take. So have you ever had any bad reactions to superfoods that you've tried?
Oh my God, yeah.
You have.
Yeah. Um, Unbeknownst to me, years and years ago, I was in the I was in the Yucatan Peninsula in this ancient kind of Aztec restored area of a friend of mine, um, Dr. Burned, and he was an incredible historian of the culture and the people, and had a forest that I stayed in. I was in a hut, and the next morning we out, and he had cashew. And people don't realize that cashew fruit looks like a bell pepper, and then on that end it has the nut, and it's like the little handle. So I'm grabbing these, and I don't know that there is a resin within the cashew, once you crack it open, that resin is toxic. And I didn't know that. I was eating the fruit. I started cracking open the nuts. I started eating a bunch of that. And these guys ate it too. And next thing I know, my whole mouth is numb. And I was talking to these guys like, what's going on? You guys' mouth numb? Yeah. So it was numb all day. I couldn't feel my mouth, my lips. Next thing I know, the next morning, my whole lips peeled, like the skin peeled off.
Oh my gosh.
And then, of course, while they're numb, we're running around the Yucatan, and we all look, and I can't believe Byrne didn't say something. Um, and we looked, and like, yeah, that was a an ancient uh tooth number that they used to do when they had to extract a tooth or whatever, and so it swelled up my lips and it peeled my layer off. So that
Oh
was
my God.
that
How
was
long
an
did that take to recover?
it's probably like 3 4 days.
Oof. God, that's rough. You can't probably
Yeah.
not eat much of anything after that.
No, it was a
So
little
what was
shock.
this during the filming of the show, or this is before that?
Oh, this was 10 years before. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's
No,
cool to me. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, nothing like that went down during the show.
So it's cool to me talking about the show because I didn't know how long you had been doing this before you started the show. So
Mm.
how did the concept of Down to Earth come about?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll try to keep it short, but so Zach, the relationship developed from Zach hearing me on the Rich Roll podcast some years ago. And so Zach reached out to a mutual friend that knew Rich and was friends with Zach. So
Hmm.
that mutual friend reached out to Rich, and Rich called me and said, "Hey, is it okay that I give Zach Efron your number? He wanted to reach out to you." And I'm like, "Sure, whatever." Um, and it wasn't the first time, I was expecting a celebrity to give me the next, superfood or whatever. And so I forgot about it. And then months later, I get this text message from Zach, and he kind of like, "Hey, I really was touched by what you said," something to that effect, and I really would love to meet up. And so we got together at lunch and just sat there for a few hours, just getting to know each other and talking about health, and then just developing a friendship. It was came later where I wasn't pitching him on a show. I had written down over the years, people said, "Let's do a superfood hunting show," and it never felt right to me to do it. It was like a lot of work, and I just, I it wasn't right at the time. And so I said, "Well, let's do a kind of episode of superfood hunting and health and longevity and water and stuff like." So I had written that down. And so when Zach and we were kind of talking one day, and he said, like, "So what else you got going on?" And I told him I have this idea for a show. And he was like, "Holy shit." So you would travel to those places, you would get involved. And yeah, I'm like, yeah, yeah, of course. Um, so then very quickly thereafter, he had called me back, and I didn't know he never said, "Let's do a show together." He just called me back, and he was like, "Hey, I have this this deal already done with Netflix for an existing show, but I don't want to do it." It was called Spooning with Zach,
Okay. Oh God.
but it was like spoon, like certain celebrities going in their countries of origin,
Yeah.
eating culturally significant food, something like that, right?
Interesting.
And so he talked to his whole team who didn't know me from a hole in the wall, and said, "I want to do the show with Darin, and he has all these ideas." And so in that, I was meeting all of his team kind of individually and getting to know them, and it was a little uncomfortable, and then it was gonna go, and Zach wasn't gonna do that other show, so there might as well use this platform that they've already curated and create this new idea and bring me in as a co-host, and the rest is history. We did it. He walked me in, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah. So you were used to doing all of this pretty much solo before, correct?
Yeah,
So how
yeah.
was the dynamic different? I'm sure it was very different doing it with a whole team and with Zach and having to explain what you already knew. And maybe you had been to some of these
Oh man,
places. So how was that?
it's interesting that you say that because I almost quit
I bet
because
it's totally different.
it wasn't an ego thing, but it was usually like, hey, I'm driving the ship and let's do this, let's do that. But I'm
Mhm.
coming into, so now we're in a foreign country. In the first place we actually filmed, it wasn't the order of the show, but the first place was Puerto Rico. So I had known Zach and we had a relationship, but I didn't know anyone else really. Of course, I met some of the production because we were developing the show, right?
Mhm.
And I liked them and it was great. But there was some healthy tension because I'm sitting, there's Laura, one other production who had some knowledge of environmental stuff and health
Mhm.
because she had her own journey of health that she went through. So I had a little bit of a touchstone with that, but I still didn't know anyone. So when we were in Puerto Rico filming, and then it was like, Zach, it's all focused on him, and I was like, wait a minute, in my idea, he was supposed to be coming along with me, not me tagging around with some celebrity,
Yeah.
right? So I was having a hard time and going, I don't want a show that's just bullshit. I
Hmm.
don't want a show that's just blah blah blah, some celebrity, blah blah blah. I said,
Hmm.
no, we need to share this information. We can't fucking water it down. And so it was a couple of days of filming, and I was in my hotel room just really having a hard time. And I basically turned the camera on myself and I just kind of just blasted what my thoughts were.
Hmm.
And I just sent that to the production, and just go, I might leave because this just doesn't feel great. And then a great producer who is on with both seasons, Michael Simkin, and we didn't come from the same world at all, but he was enough open and I was enough open to have healthy dialogue. And I think that part of that tension created some of the greatest television because I was able to see from his perspective and let go of some of the intensity of subjects that I
Yep.
wanted to get into. And that was extremely important because who did I want to talk to? People that were like me or people that weren't like me, that we could bring into this show. And I think that was a bit of a lightning in the bottle.
Yeah, well, I think they captured it very well and it seemed very natural. It didn't seem anything staged or too played out
Right.
or anything like that. But it is hard when you're super interested in a topic to not
Yeah.
go overboard with it and to still kind of, share kind of what you want to share, but not getting too intense. So I see how that could
Totally.
be difficult. And I don't know how I would navigate that doing things on my own and knowing all this information and then having to put it into a show for the world to see. It seems very tough. But you did a great job. I watched all of it. Are there any times on the show or just with your travels where you saw something that completely like opened your eyes that you maybe changed your thought process entirely?
I think just added to my thought process. Number one, I think the show, both seasons, capture the human spirit of great people trying to do great things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's so easy to be in our siloed, myopic world, and we're trying to conclude the world in the best way possible to try to understand it. And I think the surprise of just truly connecting. And that's what the show was. I mean, I am completely comfortable in my passion with a camera on, doing what I believe is true
Mm-hmm.
and just connect. I have no problem. You can, you know, eh, because I believe in what I'm doing. And so I think that was just a further support of, there's so many possibilities and solutions, and I'm forever walk away going, you know what? Those people are great and they're trying to do great things, and it's not easy. when you're going against the grain and it's not common. And then just a little caveat, the indigenous people in season two, changed my life. Like that opening ceremony in the first um episode of the second season, that was the first thing we did when we got out of the Sydney and we were starting to film. That was legit. And nothing other than, okay, we didn't meet them ahead of time. And that's what Zach and I pretty much, we stayed in the car. If I didn't know them ahead of time,
Hmm.
we stayed away until the cameras were on. So it was 100% authentic.
Wow.
Like we want to consciously go, as much as I want to go up to them and nerd out and talk to them. I just save it. I can do it if there's time afterwards, right?
Right.
And then going back to another thing you said, I think from my ego perspective, there was tons of stuff I wanted to get in, but I had to share that with Zach too. So if I jumped in 100%, started asking all these questions, it would block him and it would look stupid
Yeah.
because now all of a sudden he's there, but I'm dominating the conversation. Even though I want to go into many of these areas, I can't, I got to always include him
Right.
in this process and constantly take a step back of blasting my point of view.
It's like having a
Um,
relationship,
totally.
literally.
Absolute. It is a relationship, and he's not living in the same way I am around this stuff. And so I have to respect that because that also becomes such an invitation for the audience to to be received because they may be thinking more of the questions that Zach has, right? And so that's a tricky one, but then you start to realize and you start to see the gift of it, and then you're keeping my ego in check. It's not about me. And then I'm always what I started to learn, even now with books and everything else, I have the audience in mind more than I used to in the past.
Mhm.
How are they going to hear what I'm saying? Uh, and 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 how is this scene or how is this meeting going to support a healthy planet, a healthy person, a inspiring message? How can we do that in the face of extraordinary situations going on in the world all
Mhm.
over the place? How can we be positive as well as pragmatic? We've got some issues, right? So, we have methane that's, 100 times more dangerous than CO2. And wow, this asparagus from Tasmania's ocean, we can plop it in the feed of cows and 99% of their methane goes away. Holy shit. Like, is this a perfect solution to animal agriculture? No, but it's a freaking powerful one in something that we can do right now. So those
There's
kinds
so
of
many
things, right?
topics. There's so many topics that people don't even understand. And I like that the show it raised awareness to a lot of things. And then if they want to learn more, you have your podcast and you have a ton of really cool information on social media where you dive deeper into it. So I
Yeah,
think it did raise enough awareness to people want to then go and research deeper, which I think is
yeah,
amazing. But there's
yeah.
just so much that we still are not aware of. And I love that, you're doing it all. So
Well, that's where the fun part of like the more you know, the more you literally, and I mean this literally, the more you don't know. I
yeah.
mean, because it's so complex, and that's why these big topics of, call it I hate the term of these two words, climate change. I don't like them because they're politicized now. And when people
Yeah.
throw them around, they know very little about existing infrastructure, what's really going on, and the choices and the levers that are being pulled with all of that stuff. That's why who became a great friend, Paul Hawken, who's dedicated his life for an amazing book, Drawdown and Regeneration. He's become a friend. And I'm working on a second TV show off of Down to Earth,
Cool.
and these people become my trusted because they know, like Paul and my friend Chris Patton, when I ask them questions, what I'm asking into is a world of information that they have dedicated their lives to and had exposure to that I don't, right? But the more I ask questions of them or about a topic or a situation, the more I get opened, and then a new door opens going, wow, I had no idea it was that complex. I had no idea that, stopping plastic overnight is impossible. It would destroy our entire economies. But do we need to stop using it? Yeah. But we need to work together in industries to change some of this stuff. We can't just go to regenerative agriculture overnight. We've got to start with where we're at now and move forward and re-educate ourselves. So it's so complex. And electric cars and just saying that electric cars should be the answer is utterly ridiculous, right? It's
Again
just
with marketing.
yeah, it's utterly ridiculous when
Hmm.
people throw out these things so flippantly, like this is the way. And like
Hmm.
it could be a part of it, but we're all barely hanging on to grasping the complexity of life itself, let alone our interactions with it. We're all tiny fractals of this magnificent mystery, and we have to just settle down and come to the table together as opposed to making everyone wrong.
Yeah.
And listen, agree to disagree, but do it out of respect.
Hmm.
Like you're never going to convince me that eating a carnivore diet is healthy. You're never going to convince me, but I don't care to try to convince you.
Yeah.
Like if that kind of thing. If they want it, it's their choice
Hmm.
to do whatever the hell they want to do.
Hmm.
But I see it from many different aspects for me that go, that's not good from many different. So, as an example, that's my own opinion. And you're going to ask me a question, I'll give you my opinion,
Yeah.
but I don't care to try to convince people.
Hmm.
Like, I'm just not into it.
Well, because you've found your real purpose, which is doing your research, figuring out what there is in this complex world, and then
Right.
raising awareness. That's you found this purpose and you're so passionate about it and you're very positive and uplifting with the information that you have that of course you don't care about anyone else's opinion. You just want to show the good in that in your information, which is, I mean, that's great. You don't have to do anything
Yeah.
else. So
Yeah.
convincing people is such a waste of time with anything. So,
Yeah. And, with the second book that I have called Fatal Conveniences, it isn't without like holy shit moments.
mhm,
It isn't without like I'm not just like sitting over here going, it's all good and butterflies and rainbows. It's not good. There's a lot of things that we are failing at
yeah,
miserably. Going back to the toxins in our products and everything else, going, I want to give you the information based on hundreds and hundreds of research. Here's my conclusions. And I'm kind of mostly leaving every chapter in a question mark. Does this sound good to you? Question mark. Like, like choose your own, but
yeah.
you don't have to put a Teflon PFAS derivative dental floss in your mouth when it's linked to cancer. You don't have to do that just so you can have a convenience of slipping in between your teeth. You can try this other product,
Yeah.
which is not going to happen. So that's the idea. I don't want to disrupt your life too much, but I want to wake up
Yep.
the apathy that I think however it got here from big media, from big companies and big manipulations, whatever it is, we've somehow been convinced that whatever we buy is fine and good, but it's not.
Yeah.
And which goes back full circle to why I kind of got into the superfood stuff. I started seeing like shit just doesn't add up. And then
Yeah.
my dad, and it's not adding up. These things. So it's like I believe, I mean, you've got asked such good questions and I'm just going off, but
I love it.
I believe in the human spirit. I believe in sense within all of us.
Hmm.
So if when you lay information out and they still want to do what they want to do, that's fine. But I want to flip that switch back on, going, does this make sense? Does this make sense to do these habits that now you know are harming you and potentially your children, or exposing you in these harmful things? Is that a good idea? No. And so let's just shift our attention. We have, you know, over 8 billion people in the world, and I believe in the human spirit. I believe in that we all want the same things of
Hmm.
health and prosperity, and we want to be happy, and we want to take care of our family, and we want connection. I always go back to the simple kid that grew up in Minnesota, right? I just go back to that and go, all right, this is what I'm going to do. My next chapter is I'm going to raise the attention of things that aren't so healthy for people. And because I don't want people to suffer. My dad suffered. My
Yeah.
book's dedicated to my dad. I don't want people to do it. They don't need to. And I don't know why these systems are in place, but they're in place and they are exposing people, and it's not good. So let's do something
Hmm.
different. And let's change some things.
Well said. So what is next? I love it all. I need to watch this back and really take in everything you said because I need to make some changes as well. But what is next for you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, yeah. So my book, Fatal Conveniences, is on pre-order right now. It comes out May 15th. Super stoked about that. 2 years of hard work and a lot of research. That's coming out. Podcast, we're amping up more and more. I still put out Fatal Conveniences on the podcast as well. And yeah, so we're going to be hitting the book circuit pretty hard. I'm
Cool.
working on some clean green technologies. We're working with some countries and governments to try to get some more sovereignty in the world.
Love it.
And yeah, so people can find me darinolien.com, Darin Olien, all platforms. And I'm always open for people finding incredible people and technologies and ways that we can support each other as a human family, and I love that because that's how it all happens anyway.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to follow along and keep going with the positivity and all the information. And thank you for coming on the Annie Tunes and podcast.
You're welcome, Annie. Thank you. It's been a great time.